Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is Werewolves of Britain for Liminal by Becky Annison. Okay, first a bit of history. Werewolves of Britain was one of the stretch goals for 2018's successful Kickstarter and is a 64-page digest-sized hardback book and is written by award-winning role-playing writer Becky Annison. Right to the cover. Here we have a sumptuous piece by Jason Benkei, which again incorporates the green colour we have come to associate with Liminal. A good start. Moving past all of the credits and contents, we get to Part 1, Introduction. Here it gives a quote from Ada Yeager about her saying that werewolves have essentially been an afterthought for too long, and then it goes on to discuss how the werewolves are considered the poor cousins of the hidden world. Usually an annoyance and overlooked for too long, living on the fringe of liminal society, though making the point that they are watched, as there is a concern that they could become unwieldy at any point. They are described as a complicated supernatural faction that are powerful and have strong emotions. They hate the Order of St. Bede and vampires who are not paying them, as well as the fickle Fey courts. They believe their time is coming. Chapter 2 goes into the nature of werewolves. It explains that they've been in Britain since the Dark Ages due to some of the Anglo-Saxon invaders being shapeshifters who allied with the humans and quickly overran the country. It's often believed that their references to wolves refer to real wolves, which is simply convenient for those residents of the hidden world, and the relationship between wolves and werewolves blurred. For a few hundred years it was peaceful between the Anglo-Saxon chiefs, with Wuffa, the chief of the Wuffingers, in 575 AD being considered an honoured werewolf clan chief who held sway over the wolf people, a mixed tribe of humans and werewolves, though this was not the only clan that existed in such a manner. It makes the point that the ship that was buried at Sutton Hoe in 625 AD contained the descendants of the Wuffingers and thought to be a powerful overlord. At some point, however, this peace was broken and the clans were torn apart, the werewolves cast out, and they became the hunted rather than the hunter. It then poses the question, how did it come to this? Well, during the later Anglo-Saxon period, a group of shape-changer wizards become full werewolves and left magic behind. Shape changes were essentially the same as other wielders of magic, except that they could assume an animal form. They discovered that while on British soil, their wolf shapes were more powerful, and every time they shifted, they felt closer to the true form of Fenrir, the giant wolf. The land was stirring something inside them, and it was formidable. At some point, there were shape-shifting wizards and werewolves, and they were very different. In fear of what their former brethren had become, the shape-shifting wizards started poisoning the image of werewolves to humans, particularly kings and chiefs, and created an atmosphere of fear by convincing them that they were dangerous and making note that they were separating themselves from their clans to form packs to control humans. They were called a pack to emphasise their animal nature, and this is considered a slur amongst werewolves. Soon enough the humans were running scared. That's not to say that werewolves were innocent victims, far from it. There were, of course, those who had nefarious plans, and those who lost control and killed humans. However, they never planned to hunt their human siblings, and by the time the werewolves had realised what was going on, it was too late. The killing of werewolves started with a few rogue ones, bad blood, in order to protect the innocent. Following this, the humans decided that the werewolves should have their own clans, separating loved ones and banishing them from the human lands. It seemed reasonable and justified at first, as it always does, in the name of the protection and security of humans. In Suffolk there's a place called the Wool Pits, or as they were originally known, the Wolf Pater. They were excavated and revealed to have the bones of many wolves. Around 100 years of activity had filled it, and it was a slaughterhouse for wolves and werewolves. King Edgar of England demanded tribute in 985 AD of 300 wolf or werewolf pelts a year, and this continued on through the Norman period, with kings continuing to offer bounty on such. In 1281, King Edward I gave the order to destroy all wolves and sanctioned the destruction of their habitat. Extinction of wolves in Britain followed, and those werewolves that remained passed entirely into the hidden world. This caused internal conflicts with wolves and shapeshifters, with some maintaining their opinions and others becoming fearful of the humans they'd underestimated. As a whole, they were far more fearsome and ruthless than werewolves, and the magicians placed an iron wolf head at Abbey Door in Herefordshire that commemorated the end of the werewolves. This, to a large degree, explains where werewolves currently are. The Yeager family stirs them with stories of betrayal that comes from a place of revenge and power on their behalf. They claim that their family roots stretch far back to the time of the fair ships arriving on the shores of Britain, though this is not true. They are aware that the stories of myth and magic awaken something in the werewolves that remain, and they're trying a different approach that appears to be working. They envisage werewolves uniting under the Yeager banner and will stop at nothing to make it so. As it currently stands, they are in small groups and share a common culture of rich oral tradition and magic. They tell stories of warriors and rebels, gang loyalty and tragedy, poems and tales around campfires when the moon is bright in the sky. They find it empowering, and the Jaeger family intend to take advantage of it. Within werewolf gangs, life is lived to the full extreme. Few survive and they don't really care. They thrive on community and wear their emotions like talismans. Their past makes them easy to blame, and they don't generally have enough in the way of wealth or political influence to prevent this. The gangs afford werewolves a measure of safety that cannot be obtained elsewhere. Gangs can and do fall afoul, sometimes taking innocent lives with them. However, a gang with a strong alpha is a powerful unit. Factions such as the Council of Merlin, the Sodality of the Crown and the like see these small gangs as beneath their concern, with only the Order of St. Bede wanting to wipe them out. The Jaeger family is growing larger and stronger all the time, and concerns are beginning to arise. Initiation rites are something that werewolves find difficult to discuss, as they're often too emotional and raw to put words to. It's considered a very personal and private experience, though werewolves are fond of spreading stories and lies about it at an almost competitive level, mixing truth with lies in order to make it deniable. It makes the point that being bitten by a werewolf, though not enough to cause someone to be able to change, is often part of the initiation of all gangs in the form of sharing blood. Those who wish to join a gang will run with them for months, maybe even years, before being initiated. They're close-knit families who don't trust strangers easily. The ability to change cannot be given to the unwilling or those who misunderstand it, and the ritual is kept secret in order to maintain the potency of it. Also, all of the gang need to agree, and the potential member has to have enthusiastically consented. When the initiation happens, the whole gang needs to be present, and at the moment of change they are spiritually and emotionally bonded to the rest of the gang. How the ritual happens differs from gang to gang, though it must be a shared experience, be that using drugs, pain, magic or even terror. At the climax, the alpha will bite the individual and the other members will lick the blood from the wound. Though nobody truly understands how it works, there are 3 definite elements that need to be there: strong mutual and emotional bonds, heightened and shared emotional states, and blood and saliva must be exchanged. The pain and shock of the bite seems to trigger the inherent magic, and not all survive the ritual, with those who die being mourned and given gang membership posthumously. Of course, the risk of death adds to the emotional state for everyone involved. It then details some elements of various werewolf gang rituals that differ from others. For the Jaeger family, they are branded before the change takes place, whereas the Red Hand gang must learn the lineage and stories of the gang, which must be recited before adding their own story into their oral lore. The Dogs of War has members perform Black Ops missions with the group, and the Lace Makers is full 1980s nostalgia and excess, while the Jawbones spend time deep in the wilderness for months, eating what they hunt and remaining in wolf form the entire time. There are rumours of cannibalistic and ritualistic killings, with the new member taking the place of the oldest member, that are allegedly true. Leaving a gang is an entirely different prospect, and the only method in past times being death at the hands of another, or for being an oathbreaker. It makes the point it's not that common these days, though many have joined the Jaeger family in recent years, and gangs who feel wronged by this place them under the penalty of death should the opportunity arise. However, the Jaeger family protects their recruits well, and nobody is brave or stupid enough to challenge them. Should a werewolf break the oath of their gang and then not join the Jaeger family, they're usually dead before dawn. It is noted that only a select few werewolves have died of old age, with them making one final transformation into their wolf form and forgetting that they were ever human, eventually becoming a natural wolf. They are known as grey pelts, and they join wild wolf packs and live out their days as a wolf. These grey pelts are revered by their gang, and it is the dream of all werewolves to end their days in such a manner. Lone wolves, or those who remain after their gang has been wiped out, are considered tragic figures in werewolf communities, with some preferring the fate of an oathbreaker to the loneliness of being without a gang. Gangs have types of magic that are unique to their initiation rite, though they also have magical powers that are fueled by gang bonds. The longer a gang has been together and the more members the gang has, the stronger this is. Also, the strength of the alpha's leadership makes the magic more potent. In almost all werewolf gangs, magic requires multiple members cooperating, which for some is just pure instinct. Some details are known about magic that werewolves use. There is a magic known as bone knitter. This is due to the cracking of bones and tearing of flesh involved in changing into wolf form that werewolves are able to do at remarkable speed. This gives them an instinctive understanding of how their bodies work, and as such many gangs have healing magic for members in the form of the rapid healing trait. There is hunting. Obviously werewolves have heightened senses, especially smell, with gangs being observed tracking their own members via smell over long distances. We have Movers 1. Gangs have been seen to move as a single unit, with each having an almost supernatural ability to work as a well-oiled machine, with some gangs being observed pulling off improvised, perfectly coordinated assaults without any apparent communication. Their strange ability to synchronise with each other over distance is something of a mystery and considered supernatural. There is territory marked, which enables a gang for a short time to subtly discourage people from entering their territory. Non-gang members will feel nervous within, and they will feel like they are being watched. We have Call of the Wild. It makes the point that the bonds of a gang exist over supernatural range, and that if an alpha howls, their gang will come to them even over massive distances. There is a type of magic that is only practiced by the Jawbone gang, called Gone to Ground, which is used to hide an individual and even small pieces of territory from the senses of others. This magic was a secret until recently when Philip Fox, a former Jawbone, joined the Jaeger family and revealed it. Lastly, we have the Hellhound or Black Shuck, an embodiment of a mythical creature that can be raised to hunt and kill a target. It's essentially unstoppable, and the ability to summon it is known only to a few of the oldest and most powerful werewolves, and it's believed that the ritual to summon it exacts a terrible price. Werewolf gang magic is designed to have a narrative rather than mechanical effect, and should really be used as a plot device for the GM. Next, we have some new werewolf traits. There is Avenge. This grants +2 bonus to melee attacks when the subject of the attack is complicit in some wrongdoing that needs to be addressed. There is Predator. This grants +2 to awareness when hunting. And finally, there is Partial Change. This allows the werewolves to change specific body parts to that of a wolf, granting a +2 to any skill that would benefit from the change. Moving on, we have Chapter 3, the Werewolf's Who's Who. The first one is Akalia the Lonely. She is the only survivor of the Stormwolves after the Order of St. Bede captured, experimented and killed the entire gang, something the Order claims was a small cell of rogue agents, though they have yet to be brought to justice. Akalia managed to escape the Order, slaying everyone responsible, taking a bite from each of her dead gang members and swearing an oath to avenge them. She is given shelter by many gangs, despite the huge bounty that has been placed upon her. She is revered and pitied in equal measure by werewolves, and every time a member of the Order dies, it's attributed to Akalia. We then have the Black Shuck or Ghost Dog. Here it gives rough details of the ritual used to summon it, usually beginning with the gang eat as a group. Passed through oral tradition, the legend seems to be reinterpreted from gang to gang, being thought of as possibly the spirit of a real wolf or a representation of all werewolves who have died, and even an omen of death. Those who see it know they will die soon. In reality, it's all of these things. There's Byron James, an environmental activist who joined the Jawbones and had the hidden world revealed to him. He began excelling in the practice of werewolf magic and quickly ascended to the level of alpha, with only one opposing him, Philip Fox, who later betrayed the Jawbones and joined the Jaegers, taking the secrets of their magic with him. We have Major Chanda Patel, the first British Indian woman to attain the rank in the British Army. She was smart and tenacious before becoming a werewolf, with the change making her even more focused. She retired from the army and joined the Dogs of War around 20 years ago. She has a reputation for being in complete control of the wolf and mentors others in her gang on how to do the same. She once assisted Madeline Jaeger in regaining control after an incident which stopped her doing so, and this is a debt that the Jaegers acknowledge, though it remains unpaid. She became the alpha of the Dogs of War 8 years ago. Next up is the Hound of the Baskervilles. Though associated with Sherlock Holmes and being a fake, Arthur Conan Doyle is alleged to have had an encounter with it that was strange. Miss Stapleton, who was overlooked in the original story, was actually a South American woman called Beryl Garcia, who became friends with Doyle. The Hound was in fact a hunter that had been sent to take out any supernatural threat against humans, and being a woman in the Victorian era allowed her to act almost unseen. When Doyle was hunting the disgraced wizard James McMahon, the Hound met with him. McMahon vanished on the boggy moors and Doyle never spoke of the details. The Hound stayed in Britain, and it is believed that there is some mission that she has not yet resolved. The Hound is still around. Werewolves are, after all, long-lived creatures, and she still hunts the supernatural, being relentless and unforgiving when doing so. It's reported that she's become more and more feral over time, and that it is getting harder to reason with her. We have Ada Jaeger. She's the alpha of the Jaeger family, and has a dream of uniting all werewolf factions under her banner and crushing her enemies. She is smart and cunning and seems well equipped for the job. The Jaegers are the biggest werewolf family around and growing in power, membership and influence all the time. She comes across as charming and authentic, being able to convince others of her cause, and is ruthless in business and politics. It's rumoured that she is half Fae, though nobody dares mention it. She wants all werewolves at her table, with her at the head of it. After this is Jamie Jaeger, Ada's brother. He is almost the opposite of Ada, being cold and violent, and is used as a strong arm for when politics and persuasion fail. Though being this way, Jamie is in total control of himself, almost as much as Major Patel. He's able to change single parts of his body and is even able to reverse the change, something almost unheard of, with the desire to fully transform being as strong as it is. This makes many werewolves fear him. Jamie was the one who thought of the werewolf powerhouse being in the north of England, namely Sheffield, and this is in part due to the particularly unsavoury types that owe him favours, with him having a network that stretches back 50 years, allowing them to be one step ahead of the game. We then have Rend, a werewolf who gave up all control, who lives to kill. It was thought for a long time that Rend was uncontrollable, with no humanity remaining, until one day turning up with Ada Yeager at a negotiation as her bodyguard, sitting quietly with a measure of control, branded with the J of the Yeager family and a full gang member, renders one of the reasons that they have begun being taken more seriously. Finally, we have the Wolf's Head, Robin of Locksley. Essentially Robin Hood's merry men. They were the most feared gang in all of Britain. They dressed in the pelts of animals and human skins of Normans that they had slain, and the local peasants hid and protected them, though remained in a state of terror, choosing to side with the most abundant and present threat. They were all bowmen, but preferred rending and tearing their prey with teeth and claws, disappearing into the forest when required. During their time they terrified the Great North Way, bringing York to its knees, until one day vanishing overnight. A story that remains shrouded in mystery as no bodies were ever found. Used as werewolves as more of an example of potent power, the Wolf's Head is often used to invoke weight and legitimacy into an argument. However, the name has started to be whispered again in parts of Nottinghamshire, which although most are laughing off, has created an itch of worry in the minds of others. The next section is called Gangs. Before I continue, I'd like to point out that this part of the art, where the person is wearing a t-shirt that is a parody of Scampi Fries, a popular seafood flavoured snack here in the UK. This is something that I am actually responsible for. And it happened during an actual play of the Liminal scenario, The Oak and the Amulet, that I played in that was being GM'd by Liminal creator Dr. Paul Mitchener, with him later saying that Scampi Fries are now the official snack of Liminal. I'll put a link below so you can check it out. Okay, so onto the gangs themselves. Firstly, we have the Yeagers. They have a deliberate crafted reputation, and most members take the surname of the gang when joining. They expect total, unwavering loyalty, and each of them is branded with the J after consuming the blood of Ada and Jamie. As children of Martin Yeager, Ada and Jamie made a blood pact around 50 years ago to do what they are doing. They were raised on the tales of the Woofingers and the Wolf's Head and the crimes of the Order of St. Bede, seeing werewolves being exploited on all sides by the Fae, vampires and wizards. They swore that enough was enough and that they would end this, taking revenge on those who had wronged their kind. They understood early on that despite their apparent chaotic nature, werewolves craved community and leadership, and the only way to gain power was to unite them. Added to the fact that nobody took werewolves seriously, it took many years for the current Hidden World factions to notice their power growing, and even to this day it's expected that they will implode despite Sheffield being declared their territory. Ada and Jamie started spinning tales of the Woofingers, and King Cedric brought the Wolf's Head back into oral tradition and implied that the Yeagers were the revival of the outlaw gang, and over time this started to see an effect. Once considered second-class citizens of the Hidden World, they suddenly seemed very powerful. Ada and Jamie consolidated their base and convinced, by hook or by crook, other gangs to comply. Loyalty means more than money or power to werewolves, and family members and other gangs had to swear it to the Yeagers. They first showed their dominance when the Red Hand gang refused tribute. The Yeager family had the newest initiate die in a messy murder, and it was untraceable to them. The Yeagers started the rumour that the Order of St. Bede was responsible, and many bought this untruth. The Red Hand gang eventually paid grudging tribute. As the story of the initiate spread, other gangs followed suit and the Yeagers' power increased. Ada and Jamie made note of recruits from other gangs that they wished to take and began converting them to their cause. As such, the Yeager family is full of oathbreakers, though no other gang dared standing up to them. The first was Raymond Fellows, an ex-lacemaker who brought considerable wealth into the family, which the Yeagers used wisely, and the lacemakers putting this aside to swear loyalty was an eye-opener. As it stood, the Yeagers have power and wealth, as well as fear. They needed territory, with moorland being preferable, and this became the city of Sheffield. Other notable gangs are discussed. Firstly is the Red Hand gang. Residing in the city of Leeds, they are a hodgepodge of petty criminals, dirty coppers and street kids that are a bit undisciplined and slightly dim. They act as muscle for hire and run crime rackets in their territory. Their alpha, Tom Danes, is essentially an impotent bully who is a poor leader who many suspect won't last long under the Yeagers. Many of the Red Hand gang resent his decision to swear loyalty. There are the lacemakers. They are the moneymakers, described as being essentially formed as a kind of Rotary Club for werewolves, with only those who could prove their riches and growth being called to join. They made their money in the decadence of the 80s under Thatcher. Nowadays, the gang are more subdued and mellowed alongside the way business is done, though they're always ready to make illicit money whenever they can. They are a small but very rich gang, and the idea of an entire city controlled by werewolves is very appealing to them, and as such they've been investing in Sheffield for a few years. We have the Dogs of War. This is a gang where they are all ex-members of the armed forces. They're strict disciplinarians and have a hierarchy that they respect. They have excellent control over their wolf aspect due to their training, and they are an elite force of mercenaries who recruit rarely. They are led by Major Chanda Patel, who not only commands respect in her gang, but throughout the wider hidden world. They have no interest in being the Jaeger's private army, and it is no secret that the Jaegers would love to gain control over them. In addition to this, the Dogs of War are the only werewolf gang they are afraid of. Major Patel holds absolute loyalty to her troops and sees the Jaegers as having nothing to offer her. The Jawbones are a gang of Green Party members, climate protesters, vets, hippies and the like. They love the natural world and care nothing for wealth or power, only seeking to protect the planet, something they see as their duty. Until recently, they were considered to be flaky and unreliable to the Jaegers until a gang member approached them, offering their secret of family membership. Philip Fox was branded a traitor and has a price on his head. Fox brought the secrets of their magic to the Jaegers. The last gang detailed are the Carl Walk gang. They have a territory that runs through the Peak District and have 555 square miles of protected national park. They are much nearer to their wild origins than other werewolves. The gang was almost completely wiped out recently, with only charred bodies and a single living member remaining. Stephen Dunstan is marked for this atrocity. The last thing detailed in this chapter is in regard to the city of Sheffield itself. It mentions that werewolves have long had an affinity for the city due to it being situated on the edge of the Peak District and having plenty of green space, though it appealed to the Jaegers for other reasons, namely the spirit of the People's Republic of South Yorkshire, which they romanticise as the spirit of rebellion and revolution. It has other practical reasons though. The Fae seem to give it wide berth due to its association with metal and industry, and politically it's not something that vampires aspire to ruling, whereas wizards don't find anything appealing or interesting about it. P Division has a small, understaffed outpost there. Like the Jaegers see werewolves, the city is overlooked and underestimated, though it is highly defensible as it is elevated above the surrounding area, which has good habitat for wolves that gives them a sense of security, and it is a good place to go to ground. In addition to this, the city is built on top of tunnels, giant vaulted storm drains which have an unknown extent. There is also Sheffield Castle and the abandoned underground Firth buildings. None of the other factions have any idea how long the Jaegers have spent gathering wealth and influence here, nor how many allies they have. Chapter 5 details what the werewolves think of other factions of the hidden world. Here it covers the Court of the Winter King, the Queen of Hyde Park, the Mercury Collegium, the Council of Merlin, the Order of St. Bede, P Division, and the Fidelity of the Crown. And in the final chapter, we have a series of plot hooks that I won't spoil, and this is followed by a word from the author and the index. Werewolves of Britain, for me, stands as a rare case among role-playing supplements in that it needed less art and more writing. That's not to say there's anything wrong with the art, it's excellent throughout, however there's just a bit too much of it for my tastes, and as such the book, though lovely to behold, feels very much padded out. On my first read-through I thought that the writing was a tad too succinct and had a shortness of phrase to it that is not often encountered. That opinion was validated to a degree when I was advised that the author had just 10,000 words to write the book with, and that it appears, at least to my eyes, to be pared down to fit the word count criteria. With regard to the content, it is for the most part really enjoyable, although I do believe that a book 2 or even 3 times bigger than this could have been written and I would have enjoyed it just as much, and given Becky Annison's writing portfolio, I believe it could have easily been accomplished and would have been better for it. The information on the Jaeger clan and their plans for Sheffield is interesting but needed further expansion, and Who's Who felt a tad lacking in interesting characters. Acalia Wren, the Jaegers and Major Patel were really well written and felt easy to include in a game. However, having the Black Shuck, the Hound of the Baskervilles and Robin Hood's men has the potential to be included in game, even though the latter appears to be a lie spread by the Jaegers, felt a bit uninventive. And the climate activist who has become the leader of the Jawbones had me puzzled at his inclusion, as it felt there was nothing really special about him or his story. Also, he's a vegan werewolf, which feels strangely out of place. I believe the book should have had more gameable information in it. There's literally only half a page of rules devoted to new werewolf traits, and to be frank, little else. I would like to have seen more actual usable stuff on the current gangs, as well as maybe a guide to creating a new gang and the dynamics involved. The biggest issue really here is that Werewolves of Britain is more a book for the GM than the player, as there's hardly anything for them to use within or to encourage them to buy it, beyond it being a lovely thing to hold in your hands. There's little for players in the way of new rules, types of werewolf and the mindset of playing them, which I think would have benefited it, and Liminal, hugely in the long run. I think the book will be remembered more by what was missing than what it contained. I give Werewolves of Britain a 7.5 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review, please make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. Also, if you're interested in buying this product, I've put some links below. Lastly, if you like what I produce here, then maybe think about supporting me on Patreon or even becoming a member of my YouTube channel. Bud out.